He is slugging over 600 against lefties, but he's also slugging better than 500 against righties. And he's still a young guy in this league. You know, eventually he's going to be facing guys who are in their first and second year when he's in his third, fourth, and fifth year. And we talk about that cat and mouse game between batter, pitcher that young pitchers have to get used to, and they're often on the wrong side of it. Well, Mark Vientos is going to be on the right side of that, and that excites me, and that should excite every Met fan out there because the Mets have a keeper, and for my money, the Mets have the best third baseman in this National League.
Hey, thanks for meeting us at the Apple. I'm Vito Calisi. You can follow me on Twitter at Vito F. Calisi, and you're not John.
I'm not John.
You're not John?
I'm not John. I'm sorry.
John is on a flight to San Francisco right now on a work trip. He is going to the Jets-Niners game, which I'm very jealous about, but Jordan was at the game today, and Jordan has become our fill-in host, our fill-in guest host who joins us whenever he's here when the series ends. And what a perfect day for you to be here because John's not here today.
Works out perfectly. Glad I can help out.
Thank you. And John will be on the episode later. We did record a little bit of something because John had to get on the episode in some way, and I'm sure he's listening right now. But, Jordan, let's talk about it. Mets went on a 9-game winning streak, but today's a Sunday. Yes. They lost today. Doesn't it suck because isn't the feeling like if they would have lost the first game of this series and then won the next two, wouldn't people feel 100 times different?
It's so fascinating how the series, like just the sequence of events, impacts how you feel as a fan. When in the end, even if the same thing happens, the same amount of wins versus losses ultimately transpires, it's just how it, it was one of those games where you lose one, but we all would have loved for the Mets to win out.
100%. A 10-game winning streak? Yeah, it would have been sick.
The odds are against winning out. But hey, I mean, a 9-game winning streak in this kind of a race puts you right back into the thick of things, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, the math dictates that you're likely not going to sweep an entire homestand.
Sure.
Like, that's like a pretty hard thing to do, even if
difficult.
It is a 6-game homestand.
Exactly.
But the Mets won 9 straight. They catapulted themselves back into the thick of the wild card race. At the time of this recording, the Braves unfortunately won a game against the Blue Jays as we lost, so they're tied for that third wild card spot. But the Astros tonight, Justin Verlander going on the mound for them and pitching against the Diamondbacks in a pretty important game for the Mets, weirdly enough. So when this episode comes out, standings could even look a little more different. Obviously the Mets would stay in their same spot, but it's just it's scoreboard watching season.
It is. It's crazy, but like here we are. But it's great that things matter at this point. We're right in it, and every game matters. But at the same time, for the Mets, all we can do is just try to win as many games as we can. Whatever happens out there happens out there. But if we're winning, then hopefully good things will come out of that.
Now, are you flipping on the other games the second the Mets game ends, or are you watching them alongside? What are you doing?
As soon as the game ends, I'll turn it on. I'll get maybe updates if I'm like peeking, modestly peeking to see what's going on. But once the game ends, I'm like, okay, boom, who's playing right now? And then locked into that, and yeah, fun times.
Yeah, that's what September baseball is like. And it's
about.
just, it's crazy that we're here right now. We say this on this podcast every week, but it's just, if you would have asked yourself in May, would you want to be in a tight wild card race versus what you thought the team was going to be back then? This is what you take every time.
100%.
Meaningful September baseball games. Don't take them for granted. But look, outside of a tough loss today, really, really exciting series. So I think it's a perfect time to talk about the 5 best moments from Mets versus Reds. Number 5 on the list, even though it was a loss, Sevy pitched a phenomenal game, and getting out of the 5th inning, letting out that big scream after he had met on first and third with no outs, just worked his way out of it. Just top-notch moment that proves this rotation is absolutely legit.
As a fan, when you're watching a game and something good happens, you get pumped up. But when you see a player get as amped up as he got, it just gets you even more fired up. And he's been doing that a lot. You get into jams, which happens, but to get out of it unscathed too against a very a team like the Reds, where they can make stuff happen. But it was a big moment in the game and definitely kept things going for a while.
All right, number 4, we're gonna go with another pitching performance, a historical pitching performance, because Jose Quintana got his 100th win in his career, which puts him as the only Colombian-born pitcher to get to that benchmark.
That's a massive honor for him. I'm sure that means a lot to him, and you got to give him credit. He pitched a tremendous game. Quintana's a guy who, he's not the same kind of guy as some of the other guys out there, but he's efficient. He can get stuff done. He can get deeper into games in 6 2/3 innings, no runs. I mean, that's impressive. You take that any day of the week for sure.
And an important bounce back, not a bounce back because this is the second start in a row, but like, fans were kind of starting to question Quintana's reliability after a rough month of play, but he showed himself in back-to-back performances here like, hey, Jose Quintana is a real dude, as Mets fans should know. After last year, he was our most dependable pitcher. This year, had some really important games for the Mets. I mean, we're going to talk about this game later on in the episode, but that Mets-Cubs Sunday Night Baseball game still is one of the most important games of the year because that was in the thick of it. That's when the Cubs and the Mets were still like kind of at the same spot, and that game really could have an impact later on in the year. And those tiebreakers, they're going to mean something on the last week. We have the tiebreaker with San Diego. We have the tiebreaker with Arizona. That means a whole ton when these teams are all within a game of each other. So, Jose Quintana, and you know what? I just want to give me and John a little
Pat on the back.
Pat on the back because we did an episode a few weeks ago.
There you go.
We said the Mets had the best rotation in the National League. The comments were outrageous. The comments were outrageous. What are these videos? What are you people even talking about? What is this? Oh, have you seen it? Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to spout some numbers off for you guys that John sent from Beyond the Pale.
Go for it.
Since September 2nd, I used this date because we said this on September 1st. Since September 2nd, the Mets starting rotation has a 2.43 ERA, a 1.08 WHIP, a 2.50 FIP, and 10.2 strikeouts per 9 innings. Jordan, what do those numbers sound like to you?
Some pretty good pitching, I would say.
Would you say the best rotation in the National League?
I mean, it's hard to argue with those numbers. I think the thing that stands out to me, too, is the whip, because you're just limiting damage limiting traffic. I mean, yeah, you're looking at the numbers straight up. It's hard to really make a good case that they haven't been efficient because you see what they've done during this stretch. It's undeniable. They've been top on top of it.
And 37 innings pitched since we said this. How many home runs do you think they've given up? Just blindly asking you.
It's tough. Over 37 innings. You would assume maybe 5 or 6.
2.
Ooh, that's good.
That's what you got to limit. You got to limit the long ball. That means everything. Hunter wants to say something.
And they came in the same game.
Oh,
that's a good point.
Right? Friday night against Cincinnati?
Yeah.
that's true. It's very true.
And that was the game the Mets won.
Look at that. Would you look at that? That's good
All right.
stuff.
Well, let's move on to the number 3 moment. Game 2, 6th inning, Harrison Bader hits a home run to put the Mets ahead. The Mets never look back from that moment on, even though, you always want to see more runs, but all they needed was that Harrison Bader home run. And he's a guy that's really come through in pivotal moments this year and just continues to be a guy producing, not only offensively, but Harrison Bader's defense is just absolutely unmatched.
It's really, you can't really describe it, but when you see plays, even on Friday night's game, cutting balls off in the gap, where you've seen throughout the year, where his speed and his ability to get to a ball and cut things off. But even if he's struggling offensively, in a tough spot or a hit, you need a hit to come through, you still have a good feeling that he has that clutch gene that's going to kick in, and the Mets needed to get something going in that 6th inning. And he took advantage. He's got a pitch to hit, and he drove it out and put us on top, and we never looked back.
The number 2 moment on this list, Jose Butto, 10th inning on Friday night. We have never seen this before in the 9th inning. We've never seen two brothers, Edwin and Alexis Diaz, going head-to-head as closers in the 9th inning. Both of them keep their teams in it. Jose Butto comes out in the 10th, keep the Mets ahead by not giving up any runs, just has a tremendous job, and just another big moment from this Mets bullpen that's just been like almost, until today, this Sunday game, this bullpen has seemed unstoppable.
They've been very, very consistent and very dependable over this stretch. And I think what was big, in the 10th inning, you have the ghost runner, and so you kind of hope that at a minimum you give up the one because you have that chance to come back and get that runner in the bottom half, but to get nothing across, that's when you know, okay, here we go, it's go time. And you feel great with the guys coming up, and then leading into the number 1 spot, I mean, gives a prime opportunity for Mark Vientos.
Yeah, and number 1 moment on the list.
He has to get there.
Mark Vientos, 2 home run game, including a walk-off home run. Mark's 2nd walk-off home run of the year.
Yeah.
Mark Vientos, look, we say it over and over again. Mark Vientos is a dude. Mark Vientos is a superstar. And John and I are going to have a conversation later on this episode that you can guess by the title of this episode what that conversation is going to be. But that moment, man, it's just every time I see Mark Vientos do something, I'm so happy as just a fan of the Mets and a fan of Mark Vientos.
I'm so happy for him just as a player and just the ups and downs, starting with the team coming up, going back down, but coming up, like how he's managed and how he's kind of just been so even keel and consistent as a hitter. It's very sneaky how he's been one of our most consistent threats at the plate. Even when he's struggling, he can still drive a ball to all fields, and especially on Friday night in that situation. I mean, that was like 97 down and in, and he turned on that and drove it out. His power is unbelievable. It's just it's special. And that was a big moment to start off the series for sure.
So me and John are gonna pick this conversation up in a little bit, but I want to talk to John. A few honorable mentions also. I mean, Danny Young just becoming a dude. In 33 innings pitched this year, he's got a 2.70 ERA. This homestand alone, 3 games, 3 1/3, no hits, no runs, 5 strikeouts.
I mean, thank you, David Stearns. You see the moves like this, and you kind of realize like how dependable some of these guys have been and how valuable they've been, and how a guy like Danny Young, he can get both sides out, and that sweeper is just filthy. Seeing him come out of the pen in big situations where you just feel comfortable of him coming out and just getting whoever it is because his stuff plays very, very well from the left side.
I mean, it's when Danny Young comes out, you feel good, and at this point in the season, there's nobody in that bullpen you're watching come out anymore and getting nervous about. Adam Ottavino seemed to correct a lot of problems he had earlier in the year. Yeah. Obviously, Reed Garrett, another guy who's fixed some problems that he's had over the last month or so. Jose Budo, we've already said it, has been spectacular. Phil Maton, I understand today was a tough game, but Phil Maton's been just absolutely untouchable outside of that. He's been the closer when Edwin hasn't been available. So just some great stuff this week. Also, the Jose Iglesias kip up.
We got to talk.
The Jose Iglesias, I literally got up off my couch. I screamed Shawn Michaels. My wife said Sean Manaea. I said, no, Shawn Michaels.
Wrong Sean. That was so fun to watch. He's just such a pleasure to watch.
He has so much fun. He has so many fun moments in between pitches, in between. I'm thinking about the hug with Manny Machado at third base after the wild pitch.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's just so great to have a guy like him on the team and to see him produce the way that he has and to have the personality to go along with it. He's definitely a gem.
Yeah, and then it was good to see Starling Marte put the Mets ahead today to start the game on the Sunday game, Game 3, put the Mets on the board. But, you can't win every game. A 10-game winning streak is cool, but a 9-game winning streak is just as sick.
Yeah.
A 9-1 streak, you're going to go back. You're going to look at your MLB app today, and it's going to say last 10 games, Mets are 9-1. The same thing it said yesterday. There's not much more you can ask a team to do than that. A 5-1 homestand, another thing, not much more you can do than ask the Mets to win almost every single day you went out to the ballpark this week. So big week for the Mets and big week for you because this homestand started off with Lawrence, the band, doing a concert out in Mets Plaza by the Apple. And Jordan, that's like your favorite band, and you actually got to go out there and perform with them?
Yeah, that was wild. I mean, I was telling Gracie, who's one of the lead singers, and I said...
Name drop.
Oh, shout out Gracie Lawrence. But I said to her, I was like, it was just wild for me because I'm there on stage doing my favorite thing, which is music, with my favorite band, outside of where my favorite team plays at Citi Field. So to look to my right, see the home run apple, and look to my left and see a Clyde and Gracie and the whole band just going off. I was like, that's insane. But they're incredible people, diehard Mets fans, not just surface level, let's go Mets fans, deep rooted Mets fans, and some of the most genuine, kind, and humble people that you'll ever meet. Hanging out with them, you wouldn't have known that, oh yeah, we can have them now, they're headlighting Radio City and all that stuff, and touring. They've gone with the Jonas Brothers and doing all this crazy stuff. Last night they were singing with Meghan Trainor. I mean, it's crazy just how good they are, but as people, I love them. They're awesome.
And did they give you a heads up that you were going to come up with them, or
Not at all.
Did they just see you and say, "Hey, Jordan, get over here"?
I saw Clyde before the show because he told me that they were going to be here, so I was going to be with them sitting during the game.
Oh, you sat with them too?
I sat with them during the game, and then he's like, "Okay, we're going to do a spontaneous version of Meet the Mets." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And also he's like, "Oh wait, Jordan Simpson's in the house. Come help us." I'm like, "Wait, what?" And I woke up and Gracie's like, "Come here." I'm like, "Well, it's happening." And so I went up there and sang it. So that was really cool for sure.
That's awesome. And then you also did tailgate trivia this week too, or you did one of the trivias?
Yeah, yesterday.
So you had and now you're on the podcast. This is a big.
Hey, look at me go. But yeah, no, it was a fun week for sure.
All right, and look, we're gonna get out of here. I'm gonna throw to this segment John and I did in a second, but before we get out of here, make sure to follow Jordan at JR Simpson Music. I'm sure that by the time you're listening to this, you've already seen Jordan's recap of the Red Series. But thank you guys for listening. Also, keep an eye out. I'm hoping to do an interview with a beat writer from the Blue Jays to do one of those audio-only previews tomorrow. But this episode is not over yet, so stick around because John and I are about to have a pretty important conversation. So I'm going to throw it to myself. All right, so before, John, you got on your flight today, we wanted to make sure to meet up before the game and have this conversation in person on recording that we've been having in person on text and everything for the past few weeks, right?
Yeah, and it's about Mark Vientos. And look, Mark Vientos, everyone knows, has been not just a surprise, but a difference maker in the middle of this Mets lineup. When he first came up, he was hitting down in the lineup. Gary Cohen said it perfectly. His first walk-off home run was in a cameo appearance back on April 27th, and the home run that he hit on September 6th, Friday night against the Reds, he has become a leading man. It was such a great call by Gary Cohen. I told Gary that gave me goosebumps, but he was 100% right with what he said. Mark Vientos has become a leading man, not just on this team, Vito, but in the National League, one of the best players in the league.
So that begs the question. The main theme of today's episode is Mark Vientos the best third baseman in the National League? And John, I think the best way to do this is we could talk about it, we could debate it, not debate it. I mean, we're both on the same page, but there's a ton of moments we've just been rattling off to each other to just defend the point that Mark Vientos really could be the best third baseman in the National League.
Well, if you go by OPS, which is one place you could look, there isn't a third baseman in the National League with a better OPS than Mark Vientos among third basemen with at least 350 plate appearances. There is only one third baseman in baseball with a better OPS. It's a negligible difference. This is, of course, being recorded before Sunday's game. We do not know what Mark is going to do on Sunday. He could very well hop that third baseman I'm talking about, and it's Rafael Devers, who is a premier player in this game. So you look at OPS right there. You're told that Mark Vientos is, as far as offense goes, they don't come much better at the hot corner than Mark Vientos. He's had big moments that some people forgot about. You think about the game against the Athletics, the Thursday game on August 15th. Mark hit 2 home runs that day. He put the Mets on his back. You think about the July 31st game against the Twins. He homered against Pablo Lopez, gave the Mets a lead. You think about the game the Mets won in London. Mark had the game-tying single in the 9th inning before the Mets eventually took the lead. That's just a few. I know you have a few moments also.
Yeah, I mean, you think about his 451-foot home run versus the Cubs on Sunday Night Baseball. The first of these games that we called almost playoff-type moments for this team. We saw that again in Arizona. We saw that again in San Diego. And then we saw this last week. I mean, his walk-off versus the Reds, the 2-home-run game that just put the Mets over the Reds to really continue this win streak. And then you think about one walk-off, you have to talk about the other walk-off when Mark Vientos comes up for a cup of coffee because Starling Marte is going on the paternity list. And what does Mark Vientos do? He shows why he's a major leaguer. And he knew he was only up here for a few days. He knew even doing that wouldn't keep him up there for that week. But you know what? It paid off in dividends in the long run because he's up here to stay now.
He is. How about the home run he hit on August 21st against Craig Kimbrell? Gave the Mets the lead in the bottom of the 7th inning. And if it weren't for, let's just be honest, we could say it now, it's a couple weeks ago, an awful strike or ball call that Jose Butto wound up putting a runner on base, the Orioles might not tie that game, and then the Jesse Winker walk-off home run that we all remember might not be necessary, and it's Mark Vientos' go-ahead home run that we talk about. The Mets went on Tuesday against the Red Sox, where a 2-1 game, a close game, Reed Garrett gets out of the top of the 8th inning with a double play ball, but it's still 2-1, and you're going to have a high-leverage situation in the bottom of the inning. Mark Vientos hits a solo home run, gives the Mets a little bit of breathing room. They, of course, tack on some more runs. Edwin Diaz doesn't have to pitch that night. But these are just some of the big moments that Mark Vientos has had. We've said it before. His entire minor league career, he has done nothing but hit. Some people were surprised by Mark Vientos. Some people were expecting this. If you saw Mark Vientos and the work that he put in, showing up to spring training well before spring training or even pitchers and catchers began the work in the cage with the hitting instructors and the hitting coaches throughout the organization. A lot of guys he's worked with in the minor leagues who are still in the minor league side of things are Jeremy Barnes and Eric Chavez, the different drills and the amount of time that he puts into his craft. And I know that that's been talked about, how hard he works. When he jumped on home plate on Friday night, the first thing I thought about was the memories of seeing him in the cage, not just this spring training, but last spring training. When Mark Vientos had just a cup of coffee in the major leagues in 2022, he got a taste of it. He was here with the team during the postseason. I got to talk to him that postseason. He told me how awesome it was to get the experience.
I saw a video from spring training of this past year where it was Mark Vientos in the cage and just Francisco Lindor just sitting behind him and just like giving him feedback on his swing and just really going into detail with him. And those are two guys that are having an incredible year. And, Mark Vientos, we're talking all about his offensive side of the ball right now, but on defense, he's also had some incredible moments this year to just really prove he is a well-rounded third baseman. That, like, us saying he could be the best third baseman in the National League doesn't just stop at him hitting home runs and having game-tying, game-winning hits. I mean, he's also had plays like, let's talk about Mets versus Nationals. Not only did he start that game off with a home run that really was able to put the Mets ahead, that was the game where the Mets ended up winning, I think it was 8-7. Things kind of fell apart at the end. Mark Vientos had some plays in that game that really kept the Mets in it, and at the time you're thinking, well, it was a 5-1 game when he made these good plays. Well, if Mark Vientos doesn't make those plays at that moment, maybe it's not an 8-7 game. Maybe it's a 10-8 game.
The hard work that I just talked about with Mark in the cage, it doesn't stop, like you said, in the batter's box. It extends to working hard with Mike Sarbaugh before every game. I mean, last year when Joey Cora was still here, Mark was out every single day on 2 knees, taking fungos from Joey Cora, working on his hands. We saw the footwork drills that he was doing with Francisco Lindor during the offseason. He is a man possessed. He continues to grow each and every day. He gets better each and every day at his craft, not just at the dish, but also in the field. And there is still more room to grow for Mark Vientos, and he tastes it. He's a guy who he wants to be the best. He talks about wanting to be the best, and the strides he has made on the defensive side of the ball, because that was the knock against Mark Vientos when he was coming up through the minor leagues, was people doubted that he could play third base at a high level, but he has done that. He has been very steady down at the hot corner for the Mets. And like I said, he continues to work and get better each and every day. And that's why I am so excited about this kid who, we said this yesterday, we did a panel with Todd Zeal. You guys will see that soon. He's only 24 years old. It's the greatest part about the Mark Vientos story is he is so young. Usually guys come up, sometimes 25, 26, 27. He still has room to grow, and that's scary because if you extrapolated the current pace that he's on, he has a little bit over 350 plate appearances. If you made that 600 plate appearances at the pace that he's hitting home runs right now, it's 39. And again, this is a kid who is still 24 years old. And my favorite part about Mark Vientos, we know he crushes left-handed pitching. He had the walk-off against Justin Wilson, former friend of the Mets. He is slugging over 600 against lefties.
Not a friend of the Mets, a Met.
Slugging 600 against lefties, but he's also slugging better than 500 against righties. He is not a platoon advantage merchant by any means. He has done extremely well against right-handed and left-handed pitching, and he will only continue to get better and better as he matures. And he's still a young guy in this league. Eventually he's going to be facing guys who are in their first and second year when he's in his third, fourth, and fifth year. And we talk about that cat and mouse game between batter pitcher that young pitchers have to get used to, and they're often on the long side of it. Well, Mark Vientos is going to be on the right side of that, and that excites me, and that should excite every Met fan out there because the Mets have a keeper, the Mets have a stud, and for my money, the Mets have the best third baseman in this National League.
A guy who's only made 4 errors total this year, and again, this is before Sunday's game, so no idea if that number changes. I'm sorry, my apologies. But you know what? Mark Vientos' trajectory this year reminds me a lot of Alec Boehm in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, Alec Boehm.
Remember that game in Philly?
Yes.
Remember I Hate It Here?
Yes.
And then after that game, he just went on to have like a tear of a year. Obviously, Phillies go on to be in the World Series. Mets are on a similar path. Mets are having a really similar year to the Phillies did in that year. Obviously, our manager is safe. Our manager's done a great job. Possible manager of the year, as we said in the last episode. But if you look at those 2 seasons of just how down things were for the Phillies that year and how down things were for the Mets this year, and just seeing the rise of Mark Vientos, I think Alec Boehm's a pretty fair comp.
Yeah, I mean, Vientos has more power than Alec Boehm.
Well, no, for sure. I just mean as far as like a developing player.
Sure. Boehm went to college, Vientos didn't, so a little bit different there. But in terms of just the overall product, I honestly think Mark Vientos is better right now than Alec Boehm was at that point in time. Another thing I mentioned.
I don't think Alec Boehm was ever in the conversation for Silver Slugger that year, was he?
No, he definitely wasn't.
No.
But another thing, aside from the lefty-righty split, and this kind of plays into it, is the home run distribution. He could hit the ball out to right field. We saw that against Oakland that Thursday afternoon game, or the home run I mentioned against Pablo Lopez. He could hit it straight away center, 420 plus. We saw it against the Red Sox. We saw it against the Orioles. And he could pull the ball also. Justin Wilson tried to go in on him. That was a long at-bat. Mark Vientos won that battle. He hooked that ball. Off the bat, I thought it was foul. I mean, he kept it plenty fair, but he hooked that ball. He's hit some dead pull home runs. So he can beat opposing pitchers in so many ways, and there is not a stadium in the major leagues that can hold Mark Vientos with the kind of power that he has to all 3 fields. I want to see some more number 27 Vientos jerseys around Citi Field, and I bet you there are going to be many more around the holidays. Go MLB store in the city. Go to the Mets team store while it's still open. Get yourself the Mark Vientos jersey, it's going to be a keeper for a really long time. The Mets got themselves a good one, Vito.
You know, I was actually listening to the Fan the other day, and it was at like 9 a.m. So I don't know who hosted the 30-minute 9 a.m. show, like right before Hi, my name is Greg.
I think it was
That
probably
day?
Pat Boyle.
Okay, Pat Boyle that day is talking about how he's been wanting to buy a Mets jersey all year and whose jersey he was thinking about buying. And he said, well, you know what? This year, my favorite guy to watch has been Mark Vientos, so I think I'm going to buy Mark Vientos jersey. And I think a lot of people are going to look back at those 2 walk-offs this year. They're going to look at all the moments they had, and I think you're 100% right. You're going to see Mark Vientos jerseys flooding this stadium soon to be. I would say in the final homestand, we really start to see it come. Now, John, before you get out of here,
Yeah.
I do have a voicemail.
All right.
And I did look at it. Now, you met some people outside
At the Apple.
the other day. I was not there. I was having some physical ailments. I don't want to get into it. But you handled it really well. And we got a call about one of the interactions you had. So, without further ado, let us play this voicemail.
Hey guys, this is Mark from East Brunswick, New Jersey. Central Jersey represent. There you go, John. Calling in today. This is right after the Mark Vientos 2-home run monster game, walk-off 6-4 win. And my dad apparently annoyed John at the beginning of the game at your booth, giving you a hard time about Pete Alonso. So I'm going to throw you 2 lovely questions, John, to redeem the family. Number 1, if you could eat dinner and spend the day with 4 Mets, alive or past, who would they be? And number 2, on the 2024 OMG Grimace Hawk to a Mets, who is the funniest Met behind closed doors? Thank you guys. Love the pod. LFGM, and we're going to the World Series.
All right. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, Mark, your dad did not annoy me at all. I love the interaction with fans. When he asked me about my thoughts about what the future holds for Pete Alonso, I mean, look, I don't want to give an answer.
We've been very clear. We've said on the show before it would be sick to see him break every record the Mets have.
100%. I love Pete Alonso. He had a big hit on Saturday afternoon with runners in scoring position. So, you know, for anyone who thinks that he can't hit with runners in scoring position, it's absolute nonsense. So glad to see Pete silence that a little bit. One of the best position players in Mets history. Take that to the bank. As far as who I would love to go to dinner with, so I'm gonna go with a couple throwbacks.
Yeah.
One of them's got to be Tom Seaver. I mean, how could it not be?
Especially, I mean, like, I think if you're talking about somebody that, because it can't just be like favorite Mets, it has to be people you think would be a good time at dinner. And everything I've heard about Tom Seaver from people who knew him was that he was, Jay Horowitz's words, devilishly funny, had a devilish sense of humor. So that's a great dinner guest right there.
Yep, that's number 1.
And broadcaster, so you know he's going to be able to carry the conversation.
100%. He was a big wine guy, so he can enjoy a nice red, a nice white. So that's number 1. Number 2, Tommy Agee.
Okay.
Tommy Agee. My dad told me so many stories about Tommy Agee. So, you know, I used to always go visit the Mark at Chase Stadium in the upper deck.
Yeah.
He hit that
How could you
home run.
not?
So that's 1. Or that's 2. That's
Is
another
that
1.
cement anywhere? Like, that's got to be somewhere,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. That's a great question, honestly. It's a question we should launch an investigation and see. That's a really good one. Let's see. I think Buddy Harrelson is a third one for me. Another one of my dad's favorites. You know, my dad raised me the Met fan that I am today. Told me a lot of stories about the guys that I did not get to watch growing up, that he did. And so, you know, he had incredible memories that he shared with me. And so Buddy Harrelson would be a third one. And then we've gotten to meet and spend some time with David Wright, so I'm not gonna say that one. I think Al Leiter, not to go like too off.
I feel like you've worked with him a bunch.
I've worked with Al, but Al is such a hoot that I think he'd be a great dinner guest as well. So I got 2 pitchers and I got 2 position players there. I mean, I could have gone so many ways, and I didn't want to prolong this. But I think that's a pretty good foursome.
All right,
of guys.
Can I go coaches? Do you think coaches is fair?
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna go Davey Johnson.
Okay.
I feel like Davey Johnson would be really fun, just like electric personality, really funny, like a fireball of a dude.
Yep.
And I'm only gonna pick people you didn't pick. Just anybody you picked is off the table. Number 2, I'm gonna go Carlos Beltran.
Okay.
Because Carlos Beltran has done some broadcasting. I've heard he's a great pastry chef. He knows how to
Right.
whip up a cake. So I'd
Yeah,
love to
yeah.
talk to him about I talked to him about like how he puts that together and like what his strategy is. And just like, this is a guy who's been known as one of the best mentors to guys.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the kind of person who's going to be a great dinner guest. He's going to really know how to keep a conversation going.
Okay.
All right. Number 3, Daniel Murphy. We've seen Daniel Murphy could talk. We got goosebumps when we were watching Daniel Murphy talk to us.
Yep.
All right. And number 4, I'm going to go another manager. I'm going to go Casey Stengel.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. All right. I mean, we both have some solid dinner companions.
We should
there.
just make it a big table and then combine both
a
of our
little dais action, like a bar mitzvah.
Oh, we all sit on one side like it's the Last Supper.
I love that. But that's great. And then as for the other question, funniest Met, I mean, Harrison Bader's really funny. Sean Manaea is really funny.
Yeah, Sean Manaea is
Those
really
two guys
funny.
are electric
Reed
personalities.
Garrett's pretty funny too.
Reed Garrett's really funny. So it's a great clubhouse. I mean, I feel like
Francisco Lindor pulls pranks.
even if you're not in there, you still, I think, get the sense that this team truly does love each other.
Pete does comedy.
Pete's funny also. I mean,
Pete's done some stand-up.
100%. This team pulls on the same end of the rope in the same direction at the same time, and I think that's why they've gotten off the mat as many
Jose
times.
Iglesias. I mean, like, there's a lot of funny guys on this team.
Yeah. They get knocked down, they get back up.
That's why the vibes are so good because they're fun dudes.
I don't think you can do what they have done over and over without everyone truly liking each other. I think that when things go south for a team that doesn't enjoy being together, a lot of finger pointing starts to happen, and then things fracture. That is absolutely not the case at all with this team, and that's why we're having the fun that we are having. So, thank you for the call. Your dad, once again, did not annoy me whatsoever. Please stop by. We're going to do that again, hopefully sometime soon. We got some watch parties coming up. We got the block party at Citi Field on the 21st of September. So we will be out there once again, meeting you great fans. We appreciate all the support, the listeners. Now, Vito, I got to run.
Wait,
yeah.
the number is 302
Okay.
615-0026. If you want to leave a voicemail, 302-615-0026. John, you're going to San Francisco, correct?
I'm going to San Francisco.
And you'll be at Jets-Niners?
I will be at Jets-Niners Monday night. So if you guys want to call in and ask me about the experience, I will have plenty to say on Wednesday when we recap the Mets-Blue Jays series, which will be a fun one. We have Paul Blackburn returning to action for the Mets on Monday night, so that'll be exciting.
Also, I have been talking to a beat writer from the Blue Jays, so another audio-only preview should be going up. When you're listening to this, if you're listening on YouTube, make sure to go subscribe to the audio version because that also should be up on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts.
Fantastic. All right, Vito, I got to run. Thank you guys so much. Jordan, thank you for filling in for me on this episode. And,
thank you guys for listening. You can follow this podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Meet at the Apple. Make sure to subscribe on audio. There's stuff there that you don't get here. So you really got to be subscribed to both the YouTube and this. You can follow me on Twitter at Vito F. Khaleesi, John at JMB9191. This is probably going to be a busy week for us. We have a lot of stuff coming out that we recorded this past week that we want to make sure to get out. So make sure you are subscribed on all platforms. And John, have a safe flight.
Thank you. Meaningful baseball in September. We got football back. Go Jets, go Giants, go everybody else. Good luck with whatever sort of extracurriculars you get into. See you guys later.